Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. Learn from their experiences and navigate the highs and lows of the investing world. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. I am privileged to be joined by my new friend, James Michener. He is a real estate agent. He's a real estate investor. He's been in the business for over a decade. He's got a pretty impressive rental property portfolio, and he really understands the intersection of both being a real estate agent and also being an investor. And so we're very privileged to have him with us today because he's going to share some of those nuggets with us today, and also potentially give us some advice on how real estate agents and investors can work together. And also interested to learn his perspective on how real estate agents now have to operate in this new world post NAR lawsuit and buyer commissions being eliminated. So James, thanks, man, for taking the time. I really appreciate you hanging out with us for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Benson. We had some good talk before this, which I enjoyed. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
So you're out in the greater Phoenix area, which is really super competitive market.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting area because a lot of people move there, right? You got some pretty, interesting weather. It's pretty dry, but it's good for people like the snowbirds, people who move around, maybe move from the north to, some warmer areas. But it's also like a really popular area for wholesaling. There's a lot of real estate gurus in your market. Like, what is it like operating in the area that you're in?
So I'm about an hour north of Phoenix, up in the mountains in Prescott, and we're about 150 people within our community. So there's 150 residents, and there's over 3,000 real estate agents, and then you have all other wholesalers. So to say it's competitive, yeah, it's extremely. Down in Phoenix, I think at one point in time there's like 100,000 real estate agents, and there's only so much market. So everything seems to be piloted here and then Texas and Nevada, which is crazy when it comes to real estate stuff. So it's extremely competitive, but there's also a lot of knowledge. Like we were just talking about Pace Morby, Demji, and Brent Daniels, and they're all down here as well. So there's always new blasts that they're doing or groups that you can get into, and just a lot of good knowledge around us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot. I mean, they're like some of the more well-known, people who teach out there, but there's a bunch of what people would call gurus that end up in your market. And you got an interesting background because, you've been, licensed for many, many years, but then at some point you saw the advantages of investing in real estate. Was that kind of the goal the whole time, or were you like, oh, I would just become an agent, you make some commissions, and then somehow you stumbled upon the real estate investing aspect of it?
Yeah. So my guardian father's been a broker for 45 years, and I saw him retire at like 54. And he did that through rental property acquisition and then private money notes. And I thought, oh, that's genius, right? And in the beginning of my career, I just wanted to sell as many houses as I could, save up money, and just build a fun career, right? And then I kept coming across all these deals all the time, and I'm making really good money at that point. So I just started living off of like 30 to 40% of my income, and then buying rental properties. We did house hacking at first. So we'd buy a duplex, live in one side, rent out the other, get another house from one of my previous clients or my sphere of influence. And we moved about 5 times within like a 5-year period, 6-year period, but we did all owner financing. And then at that point, my real estate business has built up so much that there's a lot of cash I had saved up. So I just started buying more and more of those deals that I saw were deals, and just followed the blueprint of my guardian father. So the goal in the beginning was to just build a business and have fun with it. And then 2 years into it, I realized, dude, this is really hard. Like, it's a hard business, and I'm working a lot. So I want to be able to pick and choose where I want to be, when I want to be there, and work the deals I want to do. And that's what ultimately got me into investing. And now I absolutely love investing. my favorite thing to do. So
Oh yeah, it's fun. But you're
yeah,
right. It is difficult, and there are some ups and downs, and there's those deals you make money on, and the ones you potentially can lose money on.
yeah.
Hopefully, you've done it well enough to where you can sort of mitigate some of that risk. But now, so you've got a pretty good sized team of agents that you've grown, and um, you're doing some coaching, and you're teaching them as well the way.
Yeah.
Um, how are you helping them to kind of avoid some of the obstacles and road bumps that you encountered along the way?
So the number one thing is that I preach about is like use your real estate career and the money you make from real estate to invest in real estate and passive income. Because that was my
Mm.
biggest aha, was realizing that I wasn't going to be able to work 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially after I had kids. So I'm trying
Yeah,
to teach my team and my coaching students that they need to build their business, get the money from the commissions, and then invest that into passive income, such as private money notes,
yeah,
other parts of your business, such as wholesale or rental properties. So that's a big thing for me, is just teaching them how to build a business that they'll last and survive, especially now, especially since the NAR thing just came out, and it's kind of front and center of what's happening in our real estate
yeah,
market. So just teaching them how to control their future through building their business and investing that money into passive income.
yeah. What do you think the biggest effect is, like, just like front and center, like right now, from that? Like, how is it affecting your team the most? And then how do you see that evolving over time?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is just the agents on my team and other teams just wondering like what's going to happen, right? Like what exactly, how do we navigate this? Nobody really knows because it doesn't take effect until July. But what we're all kind of concluding is that there's going to be a lot less competition within the marketplace because it's just going to become harder. There's probably going to be a lot of people, a lot of agents that are going to turn away from working with buyers and just work with listings. And then there's some of my other friends that are going in all in on the buyers, right? And so um, I think it's been long overdue that there's a system in place and an urge to work with people that are actually pre-qualified and that you can actually sell a house to instead of just putting anybody in your car. I was
Hmm.
totally against that, and my entire career was just, "Hey, you wanna look at property? Okay, come on in," right? Now, what
Mm.
I think it's gonna do is force agents and incentivize agents to make sure that they're working with a good qualified buyer, somebody that can afford to pay the extra percent or percent and a half of the commission. And overall, I think it's gonna put a lot of, pressure on commissions in general, especially in the beginning, right? Um,
Yeah,
but I watched a podcast or a little short on TikTok the other day, and this guy said, there's all these institutions that are buying first time home buyer homes. And now you're having the first time home buyer come in with commissions for the real estate agents, closing costs, inspections, all kinds of stuff that they have to come in. And the biggest hurdle is them now having money to give to a real estate agent to provide them a commission, and that's going to hold them back more than ever. So it gives these institutions more play with the cash that they have on hand to invest. So I think it's
mm,
going to be kind of tricky for the first year, just like everything. I mean, it took us a year and a half or so to get everybody kind of normalized with the new market that we're in with the higher interest rates. So I think it's going to be the same thing going forward. And how to navigate it, you just got to get that buyer broker agreement signed, have tougher conversations, and work with
yeah,
less but more selected people,
yeah,
clients. Yeah,
yeah. I'm surprised that any agent would put an unqualified person in their car and drive them around. That blows my mind.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Um, but I really think the opportunity for agents to differentiate themselves comes when they work with investors,
Yes.
because the investors do have more disposable money, and there's more of a value add when you work with an investor, when you're the one that's finding deals that are going to make them money.
Hmm.
And so they see more value of that, and it's much more rare to find an investor friendly agent who invests themselves but also knows how to run the numbers
Yep.
and knows how to identify a deal and then making sure that deal gets to a closing. So the agents that can niche themselves working with investors, I think are going to have a much larger advantage than somebody who's just trying to work with the average buyer who's finding a house to live in.
Yep. I think you're pretty spot on with that. About 4 years ago, I started a wholesale group within my real estate company.
Mm-hmm.
And by the second year, we closed 36 deals. I made over $500,000 in assignment fees. And then I bought 3 of those properties that I had called to do wholesales with. And then we increased our listing volume. We closed 24 of those deals on listings, and then we did 36 wholesale deals. The next year was when
Mm,
all the interest rates changed and we got down to 17 wholesale deals. And now this year, now that's normalized, we're at about 15 as of right now. But it's because we turn to the investors, right? And we turn to the people that
right.
are willing to pay cash. And you don't, the great thing about investors is you don't have to work with 20 or 30 or 40 of them. You can work with 5 or 10 and make a really good living off of that.
Oh yeah.
And you build a relationship. It's all about relationship and being honest with them and finding the deals for them.
Oh
And then
yeah.
one of the most important thing, Benson, is becoming an investor yourself, right? Like learning how to be an investor and run those numbers for your clients and for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that that experience in analyzing deals for yourself goes a long way for building credibility with an investor.
Hmm.
Um, if and I've heard this before where an investor goes to an agent and if they don't invest themselves, they're like, well, how is this person really gonna
Yeah.
help me? Right? Like maybe they know how to run numbers. Maybe they took a CE, credit class that taught them how to
Yeah.
analyze a fix and flip or run a cash flow analysis on a duplex or something like that. And yeah, that helps. But there's so many other places that actually going through a transaction yourself is different than just the theory of analyzing a deal and searching for a deal like that on the job training of like
Yeah.
doing your own deal is invaluable.
It's so important. Yeah. If you can learn how to run numbers and everything, but the thing that they don't teach you or drill into you without having the experience is, hey, how's a 3 bedroom, 1 bath with no garage gonna pan out on a busy street? Well, I'm getting it for a great price. Yeah, but what kind of tenants are you gonna attract with that? How much appreciation are you gonna have with that? So there's all these things that you run into that it might
Hmm.
look like a good deal on paper, but logistically it's not as good of a deal as you might think it will because the numbers say it is, but human human nature is not one that wants to live in that type of home immediately. So you're getting lesser tenants.
Yeah, you and I, when we were talking before, I thought we hit an interesting part in the conversation when we were talking about how, NAR, this whole idea of NAR being, the lawsuit was like 400 and something $1 million. And they're taking the commissions away from buyers. But it's been my opinion over the years that buyers have to work a lot. Well, buyers agents
Yeah.
have to work a lot harder to earn their commission than a listing agent does. So the fact that they actually did it opposite of what I would believe would be an appropriate move would be to like listing agents are the ones that actually they when they, as their book of business grows, and they have more experience and they've got more credibility. They go toward listings because it's less work.
Yeah.
So how do you think they can justify saying, well, we're going to take the commission away from the part of the transaction, the agent that's involved in the transaction that's actually doing the most work?
So how can they be justified as in
How do you think they justify it? Like, what's your opinion about that? My perspective.
I think it's interesting because I understand where you're coming from, but the majority of a real estate transaction is built off the equity that the seller has in their house. And you get new home, like a couple of my friends want to go buy a house, right? But they barely have enough money for the down payment. Like, how are they going to pay their
Mhm.
real estate agent? So it's just been common practice that the equity gets paid to from the seller to pay the buyer's agent to negotiate against them against their listing agent, right? So for me, I And I was just telling you this earlier, but my dad or my guardian father that's been in the business for 45 years, like, how does a seller pay the buyer's agent this commission when they're not actually hiring them, but they're giving a piece of their equity away to them? And so for me, um, I think it, I I think what's going to ultimately have to happen is the seller is still probably going to be paying the commission due to, but probably a lesser part of that in order to attract the buyer's agents to come to their property. But then there's all these things that come into account as well. We're not going to be able to see if the buyer's agent's making any money on the commission because they're going to hide that, right, from both sides and just say, hey, if you
Mhm.
want to bring a buyer. So there's going to be more phone calls back and forth. There's going to be more negotiation between the buyer's agent and the buyer on how much they should actually get paid for this, for the service that they're giving. So it's like I said before, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but on the East Coast and in commercial, it's been this way for quite some time. Some states on the East Coast don't show their commission. The buyer's agents have to pay that, or the seller gives commission to the buyer's agent. And then on the commercial side, when you bring somebody a deal, you don't know how much you're getting paid to bring that buyer for the seller. So I think there just needs to be more education and more understanding that this has already been in practice and the things that have actually worked and start implementing it that way. So I think it'll
Yeah.
all come out in wash. I don't think that people, I don't think that agents should give up on their career. I think they should just give it some time. It's just like when the interest rates doubled, right?
Yeah.
Um, and in some case tripled. Like it's all going to work out. It's just going to be a little bit harder. And in every tough situation, just like COVID, we thought the economy was going to be smashed. There's always going to be opportunity in every single adjustment that's made. You just have to look through it, work it, and start implementing some of the practices that you think are going to work and be a part of a mastermind or a coaching program where you led the right way. And you had brought that up before that you're part of a really, really good mastermind. And I'm sure you learn all kinds of stuff from it and you get little tidbits that other people don't know because they're not in the same rooms and the same conversations that you're having. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that is key. Um, but historically, it's been the the asset, the equity and the asset that's kind of facilitated the whole transaction anyway, like paying commissions, but also paying for the buyers. Like there was like seller concessions, right?
Hmm.
And then that would pay for like loan costs and other things too. So it isn't, I don't know that it's going to change that much as long as everybody can get comfortable with it. Like the
Yes.
seller still understands that like this is the asset that's going to pay for this transaction to happen, and it's all part of the negotiation.
Yep.
And saying, okay, well, it's a two-sided transaction. Without a buyer, there's no closing. Like the agent that brings that buyer is still very, very valuable.
Yep.
And so it's going to be the seller's choice to determine like, okay, how many buyers agents do I want coming to this place? So
Yeah.
they're still going to have to make it where their house is different than all the others out there. Otherwise, someone's going to figure out, some listing agents are going to coach their sellers.
Yeah.
Like, listen, let's put it out there that we're going to pay for the buyer's agent so we can get people to come through this thing. Otherwise, it's going to be up to the
Yeah.
listing agent to start doing their job and actually going out and finding buyers, which historically they never had to. All they had to do was put the house on the MLS.
Yep. Yeah. And you're familiar with wholesale, right?
Hmm.
So wholesale is a lot like that, where you're you're working off the equity that the seller has in the house. So you tell the seller, hey, you owe this much, you need to walk away with X amount. If I can get you a buyer for this is the fee that I'll walk away with. This is the ARV after they put $50,000 into it. So working with the investor is going to be that much more important, and working those off market deals is going to be that much more important as well, because
Yeah.
you're going direct to the seller. You're working with somebody that has cash and that can buy the property, and that you don't have to do all the back and forth with the Binzer, the appraisal, all that stuff. It's either is there value in that or is there not, right?
Hmm.
But I think you're 100% right that the listing agents are going to have to get the property primed for, it's got to be in the best shape. We need to offer X amount of commission and let them know so that you attract more agents to that particular property. So I think that you're onto something with that for sure.
Yeah.
It's just it's gonna see how does it all shake down. It's
Yeah.
gonna
There's
be
going to be some
interesting for
transactions
sure.
that fall apart,
Yeah.
or houses that are sitting on the market. There's going to be some stubborn, I would say maybe some listing agents that maybe just don't know how to describe the optimal situation to the seller. And
Hmm.
so the seller is going to think, oh, I get to save all this money, but I can still sell my house. And what's going to end up happening is that they're not going to get, there's not going to be no demand for their property,
Yeah. Yeah.
because buyers agents are going to be going to properties that actually they know they can make money on.
Yeah. Did you know
I
that?
remember back in the day, I mean, you've been in the business for a while, but there was a time period where banks, during the REO period, where banks would lower their commissions to like 2%.
Hmm.
And so what did buyer agents do? They just avoided those properties.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't do showings there because they knew they wouldn't make as much money. So they were going to the ones where there was even bonuses. Like
Hmm.
there would be sometimes bonuses built into the commission structure that the seller was paying for, but they knew
Yeah.
there was a benefit to it because it would bring them more demand.
Did you know that the listing agent can have their own website with where their listings are? Like have their own website where they can house their listings and they can put in how much the buyer's agent will be paid on that commission. So there's going to
Mm,
be one extra step that buyer agents will go there. And if they are more incentivized, or they could say, hey, Mr. Buyer, if you go buy this property, you'll have $10,000 less that you have to come out of pocket than if you go for the other one. So it's going to come to, what's that actually going to cost me at the end of the day? Right.
yeah.
And a lot of buyers, I mean, if I had never bought or sold a house, or if I did one or two in my lifetime, I'd feel very, very scared of the transaction, that I'd want to be guided in the right way. So I would opt to hire a real estate agent to help guide me through that process. And
Hmm.
that might be one of the cases. And here is uh, offering that commission still going to have to be there. But I think the whole NAR thing was to give, which is funny. The president of the United States recently said, now the new act allows real estate transactions to be negotiated, for the sellers to negotiate with the listing agents and other agents. And it's like, well, it's always been like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know a time that I didn't go to a listing appointment and have to negotiate my commission, right? So
Oh yeah. It's always
yeah,
been that way.
yeah,
I think what this is going to do is just going to make it so they're not obligated to pay. And actually, they were never obligated to pay a certain percentage. It was always just like they were. They knew it was going to come out of the transaction, but there certainly were some listing agents that would, and I did when I was doing a lot of deals with clients. I would tell my investor clients that I'll do a reduced fee for you. I'll list your property for 1%, and then I'll make my money when we go buy your next one. Right.
yes, yes,
So
yep,
that was like a way to get more people to come in, and they knew they were going to save money when they worked with me.
yep.
But that is kind of out the door now. But I think it will start to level out where the market will figure out that they still have to incentivize buyers agents to bring buyers,
Yeah,
because that's one of the most important parts of the transaction, is bringing somebody who's got the ability and capability to get a loan or bring cash and buy that house.
absolutely. It's going to be an interesting time, Benson, that's for sure. But
It is. But discussions like this are important because we're kind of fleshing out some ideas too. And, there's people that are listening to this that have no idea that this is even happening, one, but two, like, how are they going to handle it?
yeah,
And I do believe that it's going to get rid of some of the hanger-oner agents that just really haven't, leveled up, and they're not providing a great service, and maybe they do it part-time, right?
yeah,
Like maybe they wait tables during the day, or, and then, every now and again they'll do a real estate transaction. And so some of those kinds of people, I think, will start to fall off because they're just not going to be able to invest the time that's going to be required for them to give a good value proposition to their buyer clients.
I've thought about the idea of hiring a real estate agent on like a W-2 salary. and they just go show homes and write the contract. So they're going to get paid. Plus then they would get a bonus for whatever
Mm,
whatever they sell on top of the salary that I'm giving them, right? And I think
yeah.
that might start to happen as well, is there's going to be more of the more of the corporations, because they've always wanted to get into real estate, right? Like they wanted to have the Amazon of real estate. You know, you have BlackRock, you have all these institutions, and people, agents might start going to W-2 employment and then get bonuses off the sales that they make, if depending on how this shakes one way or the other. But that
Right.
might be something to be looked at too. If
Yeah,
you're
I think that could work. But at some point, though, the person who hires the agent to be a W-2 employee, there's going to have to be revenue coming in some way,
For sure. So
right?
you're
So
gonna
how
have
do
to
you
be
see
a good
that
marketer.
working? Like, how do you see that working for the the broker, right? Maybe
Hmm.
it's you as the broker hire somebody, but where do you get your ROI on paying somebody W-2 salary if there's no commission attached to it?
Yeah, I think there'll always be some sort of commission, or they'll say, "Hey, we'll work for you for 1% as your buyer's agent instead of paying this guy two or 1.5, 2%, 3%.
Hmm.
We'll work with you for 1% on this, and then there could be kickbacks depending on how much the seller brings in. So just different incentives for that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, including myself, we like to go where where companies are doing a lot of business, like Costco. I buy everything from Costco, right? Because I know that they're backed. I know that they have a good platform. I know that they stand beside the product they sell. And so I will go all day long to buy a pool there, a hot tub, a computer, a TV, like because I know that I'm going to be taken care of, and buyers might feel more comfortable with that. And if those guys are controlling the buyer leads, then who are the sellers going to want to go to list their properties? To the Costco's
Mm,
of real estate, right? So,
right.
and you do it at a wholesale fee. So that's just one of the things I've thought of. Am I going to implement that like right away and start something brand new and make it huge? Uh, Not at this point in time. My kids are still young. So, and luckily with my
Yeah.
rental properties, I can pick and choose what I want to do.
Yeah. You've been
Yep.
able to do that by growing your empire, your rental property empire over time,
Yes.
which I think I read someplace that it was like over $300,000 a year in revenue, right?
In cash flow. Yep. And then
Oh,
another
cash flow.
cash
Is that
flow.
above and beyond what you pay from the mortgage?
Yeah. So
That's nice.
that's what I'm
Wow.
making a year is 300,000, and then I loan money as well. So I make another 250 a year off that. So the passive income with a little bit of work on my rentals and a little bit work on loaning money is $500,000 a year just on that stuff. And then everything else is kind of gravy on top of it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Are all
but
your properties in Arizona?
they are. Yep. All of them. Prescott Valley, and then one condo in Sedona.
Have you thought about doing anything out of state?
Uh, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I just
Yeah.
lent a guy $900,000 to buy a 46 unit apartment complex in Illinois. So
Okay.
there are some deals I could JV or just kind of get a good deal from somebody out there. I mean, I would want to fly out there and feel
Sure.
comfortable with it and just kind of check everything out. But I would definitely go out of state. You're looking to go out of state, or you have been investing out of
I
state, right?
do. Yeah. I
Yeah.
actually moved to St. Louis about 2 years ago
Okay.
to find more like lower priced opportunities in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the data to see which markets made sense. And I was going between Indianapolis, Chicago, and St. Louis. And Chicago is more of like a tenant friendly state. So I knew long term I wanted to like really build a good sized portfolio. So I decided that Illinois wasn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis was still a good market, but I settled on St. Louis. And so I just did some virtual wholesale out there virtually
Oh,
um,
nice.
from Colorado. And then eventually, once I realized that I could cash flow out there, I just decided to pick up and move. Bought a place out there, moved into it, did a live and fix,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's now an Airbnb. And yeah, and I'm looking at properties in Phoenix or the greater Phoenix area. I
Mm-hmm.
am doing some PML as well
Yeah.
out there. I got a project that just went under contract a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
That was a PML deal, and I think my next move is really like more multifamily, like starting off with some either smaller stuff or maybe even doing a fund or
Hmm.
investing in a fund
Yeah.
as a limited partner. But I'm open, and that's the cool thing about what we do is like there's so many people to network with that are doing so many cool things that there's opportunities everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Would you rather invest for cash flow or for appreciation? Because here in Prescott in Arizona, sometimes like the numbers don't make sense to buy a rental, right? Because the prices are so high and the rents just don't justify it. It's kind of like California, basically, like high
Yeah.
prices but high rents. And then I have a couple of my buddies that own rentals in the Midwest, and they're just cranking on the cash flow, but their
Yeah.
appreciation is not that good.
Yeah.
What's your
If I
take
had to
on that?
choose, I would choose appreciation first because what comes with that is depreciation
Yeah.
and mortgage pay down. And those three things will outweigh, in my mind, like the average cash flowing property every day over
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Over time. You get those three profit centers above and beyond just the cash flow.
Hmm.
And then if you can get creative, even on top of that, maybe do some ADUs or,
Hmm.
take in a property that maybe was zoned as single family, but you can knock it down and build a multifamily on it.
Yeah.
Like there are some cool things you can do, but yeah, I've looked at properties that broke even, and those would still make more money than a cash flowing property in the same area. But it's got to be in an area that's got an upward trend.
Yeah.
Like if it's not, then it won't work.
What is PML for the
Private
listeners?
money lending.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like you do.
you
Yeah,
do it
just
yourself?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've started recently. I've only
Okay.
done a couple deals, but yeah, with some additional liquidity
Yep.
and looking at like the stock market's still pretty volatile. It seems to have stabilized a little bit, but depending on what sector you're in, like there's still like ups and downs. And
Hmm.
with private money lending, if you choose the right property, you have enough equity there that worst case scenario, you just get a house at a big discount.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. As long as you're
That's
in first lien position, right? So,
right.
um, I wanted to ask you a question real quick about cost segregation. Do you do that for your properties,
I
friends?
don't know enough about it, but it's on the radar. How
Yeah.
about you?
Well, I'm doing it this year. I tried doing it
Yeah.
last year. My accountant didn't understand it. So now I set her up with a couple people to learn that from. And so I'm hoping that we can utilize some of that cost segregation. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are big time real estate investors, and they use cost segregation all the time, and they're paying like very, very minimal taxes because they're
Yeah.
accelerating the depreciation. And I just think the rules are there, just like what Donald Trump said, right? Like, yeah, I don't pay any taxes. I'm not going to share my tax returns, but I'll tell you that I use every single rule in the IRS tax code to make sure it got there. I did nothing illegal. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if this guy is a billionaire and he's making $1 billion a year or whatever and doesn't have to pay any tax, like obviously I'm missing out on some stuff that I don't know about. So I started researching a lot through Bigger Pockets and um, reading about it and watching YouTube videos. And so hopefully it'll work out. So I'll
Yeah.
I'll let you know in about 6 months or so.
Yeah. Let me know.
Yeah.
I meet cost segregation people all the time. It's always like, man, that's just one more thing to learn, right? But
Yeah.
with the right CPA though, who already understands that,
Yep.
I think that'll solve a lot of that issue because you don't have to be the one that completely understands it. If your tax person does,
Yep.
and they know, how to set it up and how to move the money around, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, what's your biggest expense with your business and your real estate portfolio? What's your biggest expense, would you say?
Um,
Taxes, right?
no, I would say the mortgages.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
That's big.
biggest expense.
What's your
Aside from that,
Mhm.
probably lead generation.
Yes. Yeah, lead generation is expensive.
Yeah.
What's your take on having a property paid off and taking a line of credit off of it or keeping a mortgage on it? What's your take on that? Like, would you rather have it paid
I guess
off?
it depends on their interest rates,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which one would make more sense?
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, I mean leverage properties to get additional cash to do more deals for sure.
Yep.
But that's one of the lessons I learned back in like 2006, 7 is that I had a strategy of just maxing out my properties
Hmm.
and pulling out maximum amount of cash and doing more deals. But in a downturn, if you don't have any room to account for the depreciation or a change in equity,
Yeah.
it could put you in a bad position, even if you're cash flowing.
Yeah.
So
So
there's like for me, I'm just going to be careful there. I wouldn't pull out the maximum amount of money that a bank would give me.
are you a fan of the Burr method,
I
or
love Burr.
do you? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think of the pros and cons of the Burr method?
Well, pros, I mean, you get the benefit of those two different strategies
Yeah.
where like if it's a regular fix and flip, you you have to realize your gains like right away,
Yep.
right? So you got capital gains you have to deal with, right? So the tax implications are higher.
Yeah.
Um, and then with a fix and flip, you have to get much larger discounts, so it's harder to find those deeply discounted deals. So you have less deal flow typically.
Yeah.
Um, and then those are two of the cons. Um, with if you just go look at a rental, purely rental, then that is like you can buy properties at a much higher percentage of ARV. You can still look
Mhm.
for deals where you can get a discount, but I love being able to find those unrenovated homes in the same neighborhoods as where fix and flips are happening, and
Yes.
equity just appears out of thin air,
Yep.
right? As
Absolutely.
opposed if you're targeting a low investor activity area, you can't make as much money on those because if you're the first fix and flip in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
you won't even get maybe like your full equity out, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
there's nothing, no one's blazed that trail before you. So there's a really good strategy there with doing Burr, as long as you're targeting the right areas. If you're targeting a high investor activity area, it'll be way more fruitful doing Burr than if you were just investing where you live or based off of convenience or any other scenario.
Yeah.
But with Burr, you get the best of all worlds. You get the increase in the equity. You can also plan for the cash flow. And then you get all the benefits of a rental property, including depreciation, appreciation and mortgage pay down.
Hmm. Do you ever do the snowball effect on your rentals where you take extra income that comes from it and put it onto one of the higher end mortgage, like one of the higher interest rate mortgages, or do you just pay them off kind of equally at the same time?
Yeah, I've never done that before. How does that work?
So say you own 10 properties, right? And
Hmm.
one of those, your interest rate ranges, I'll give you an example of mine, right? So I have 30 rental properties. 15 of those are paid off, almost the 14th. I'll have that by the end of this year. But my interest rates range from 7.63 to 2.87%. So the cash flow on that is really good. So what I've been doing is instead of paying an extra couple $100 on every single property, I've been taking 2,000 extra dollars from the cash flow that's generated off of those properties and applying it to my 7.6% interest rate mortgage and trying to pay
Hmm.
that one down sooner rather than later, because the mortgages are set up to where it's all front loaded for the first like 7 years, right? Is when you're paying the most amount of interest, and the faster that you can get that paid down, the better. So I'm paying the most amount of interest on that 7.63% um triplex that I own. So I allocate the majority of my cash flow to that particular property, while not all of it, because I like to keep stuff in reserve. I also like to build up some capital for other investing. But I would say 40% of that cash flow is going into one mortgage. Then once that one's paid off, then I save, the 5, 6 out or the 5 grand a month that I'm applying to that one. Then I go to the second highest interest rate and I'm paying that payment plus a little extra, plus that extra 5,000, and it just snowballs it and crushes it. And it's really funny I've heard about this, right? But the aha was I was making snowman with my son one day. I
Hmm.
started off with this little tiny snowball and I just started rolling it. And then it got bigger and bigger. And the bigger it got, the faster it got bigger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a snowball effect. Like I just have to do that. And then eventually all my mortgages will be wrapped up in this one snowball that says paid off on the snowball. Right.
Right.
So it just made total sense. I ran into the house after I got done making snowman. I'm like, Shan, I just figured out what we should do. I've heard about it,
That's
but
awesome.
this just made it more relevant. So yeah.
I think it's an amazing strategy. It makes
Hmm.
perfect sense to
Yeah.
do. Um, yeah. And then that property too, would you leverage it to, take like a HELOC or take that
Hmm.
money and go do other deals with it? Or do you just, because that high interest rate, like why not just pay it off? Like you probably have enough liquidity to pay that thing off
Yeah.
completely and you get a brand new lower interest HELOC on it and do something with it, couldn't you?
Yeah. So one of the things I kind of promised myself at this point is I'm not going to pay anything off that's below like 4.5%. Right.
Hmm.
So it's kind of free money. All the other ones
Yeah.
I'll pay off. And the ones that I do have paid off, I have a line of credit on them for $1 million. So I use that line of credit at 7.25% to loan to other investors at 12.25%. So one of my
Hmm.
notes I made 60 grand on last year for a commission or for a construction loan that I did. And it was based off of, I did that loan based off the line of credit from my paid off properties. So I'm using the equity in there, just not taking it out in one lump sum and using it as I need to. And so that generated quite a bit of income last year by just having paid off
Hmm.
properties and utilizing the equity that's in those through a line of credit, which I thought was great. My opinion, I want everything paid off, and I'd rather have the line of credit and loan that out than have mortgages on my rental properties if they're
Oh yeah.
over 4.5% in interest rate.
Did you have to get that line of credit and do a personal guarantee on it, or is it backed 100% by the house?
It's backed by the house.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
because there's enough equity in this. Yep, to do
Yeah.
that. Yep.
I might have to look into that. Maybe I'll talk to you
Oh,
about the
yeah.
best way to do it.
I'll give you the contact to my banker. So she's awesome and they're all over the state. And it's a bank that like you go off of relationships. So
Hmm.
it's more of a relationship bank. Because if I tried to do that Wells Fargo or like Chase Bank or whatnot, I don't know that I would get the same results that I'm
Right.
getting now off of it. Yep.
Can
So
they operate outside the state?
yeah, they have I think they started off in Nebraska and now
Mm.
they're in like 8 other states. But as long I'll send you the number for Cheryl and you can give
Okay.
her a call. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love doing it. So it's been
Yeah,
super
that makes a lot of
rewarding.
sense.
Yeah.
And for me too, there's way more opportunities out there than there is money.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, how can I get some more liquidity? How can I get my hands on some more cash to do more deals? Um, and I haven't gotten into the space yet where I'm out like raising money, right? Like through a fund or anything like that, which is probably down the road for
Yeah.
me. But are you doing anything like that? Are you raising money for funds at all and investing that way?
Yeah, so I have a private money company called Titan Capital Investments, and so I'm the main lender out of there. But then I
Mm-hmm.
have other friends and acquaintances that are investors, and so we'll send them a deal and see if it's something they want to invest in. If they do, then in most of the cases, I'll throw in like it's $100,000 loan, right? And it's their first loan that they're doing. We'll charge about 3.5 points on that. So Titan Capital Investments keeps the 3.5 points for the loan, right? And then we'll charge 12%. I put in 30,000 of my money. The investor puts in 70% of their money or 70,000 of their money to equal the 100,000. And then we'll pay the investor either the full 12% or we'll pay them 10%. And then we arbitrage it with, or on the other end, we'll pay them 10% and then we'll keep the extra 2% that's coming in on the
Mm.
payments. So there's different ways that we've been doing it, but
Oh yeah.
it's 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 you get a lot of people that are like, yeah, I'll invest with you. And then push comes to shove, and I'm like, hey, there's this property, they need 200,000, it's worth 600,000. Do you want to do it? Oh, my money's kind of tied up right now. I'm like, but you could essentially buy a house for $200,000 and make 12%. Like there's no safer bet than that one. And then they get a little shaky on you. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I have raised funds and You just got to it's all in your network. Like you have a really good network, right, Benson? So if you start putting that out to your network and they trust you and they see a good track
Yeah.
record, then you could definitely capitalize on that.
And you don't have to do it on a per deal basis, right? You could just have like a general fund that just invests in projects along the way. So you don't have to hit up your investors every time there's a new opportunity.
Yep. I have not done that part of it yet. We haven't gotten that sophisticated, but I
That
definitely know
seems to
people that
be
do that.
an easier way because then you're not on the
Yes.
phone all day selling deals,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Because every deal's different. They're like, oh, if you find anything in my market, or if
Yeah.
I'll do this one and not this one. And it's like, no, just put the money in the fund. We'll find the opportunities. And at the end of the year, we'll give you your dividend, right? Or
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yep. And to incentivize those investors a little bit more, it's always probably a good idea to pay them out monthly so that they see it,
Mm.
a
Yeah,
little
that's
bit
true.
sooner. And they're like, oh, cool. I'm actually making money on this. Because if you have you ever heard of the marshmallow experiment from
No.
Stanford or Harvard? So they had these marshmallows, right? And they had kids go into this room and they said, hey, I'll give you a marshmallow. But if you don't eat this, I'll come back in 2 minutes and I'll give you one more marshmallow. And then they come back 2 minutes later, like, here's the second marshmallow. Oh, wait, hold on. If you wait 2 more minutes and you don't eat those marshmallows, I'll give you another one or two marshmallows. And so the kids that could hold off and just wait for their payday, if you will, to be able to eat, ended up with way more marshmallows, right? And the ones that just ate the marshmallow right away, they didn't get the second one on the 2 minutes, but they wanted it, right? But
Right.
they did the study, and those kids that waited to get their marshmallow, the second marshmallow, were way more advanced as adults in saving money and delayed gratification, essentially, right? It's all about
Mhm.
delayed gratification. So, but if you push the marshmallow eating out to 1 year, they're going to be like, no, I'll just eat the marshmallow, right? So
Yeah.
you got to give them their marshmallow a little bit sooner. That's my opinion on that. But yeah, because I know that
Yeah.
for myself too. I would hate to put $1 million into a CD and then wait until the end of the year to be able to get my dividend off of it. It just wouldn't be fun. So
No, it helps too. But if you know your money's stuck there anyway,
yeah,
it's probably better even, right? Because then you get that, you know, maybe it's $1,100 check on $100,000 loan,
yeah,
right? Like you're gonna go blow it. Like at the end of the year, you get a 20, a $12,000 check instead, or whatever that amount is. Then maybe you're gonna be a little bit more diligent with where you invest it,
for sure.
and then those
Absolutely.
small chunks along the way.
Yep.
Um, so you've done so many different things, which is awesome. You've got a really diverse background, so much so that I heard that you actually, traveled the world. You went to Taiwan
Yeah. Yeah.
and taught English
Yep.
to Taiwanese students out there.
Do I have any Taiwanese students?
No,
Or
you did. You went out there to teach English.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I did that the summer when I was 25 years old. I went out there,
That's
taught
cool.
English for 4 months, and then I went to LA for a couple weeks, then moved up from LA to Bozeman, worked on a farm, and then drove back down to Arizona for 2 days, and then went down and worked with our Race for the Wounded for our military group for the Baja 1000, and it was
Oh,
amazing. That was such an eye opener. It was amazing.
wow.
Yeah, it was
That
really
sounds like an
great.
amazing trip.
Yeah, I think it made me more confident in myself and more understanding and more empathetic of the world as a whole. Because when you're an
Yeah.
American, you don't go anywhere. You think it's kind of like a certain way because of what they say on TV or whatnot. But it it's a really beautiful world out there and really, really amazing people all throughout it. So
Oh, yeah. I,
yeah.
even to this day, I feel guilty, traveling. So I don't travel that much. Usually I'm trying to organize all my travel around events and masterminds
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and when I did travel, way back when, and I went overseas, it was always because the military was going. So then I would get a couple days to go see like Venice or Florence or,
Yeah.
some castle in Germany. But it wasn't like I had all that time to myself. I'm getting
Hmm.
better at it.
Yeah.
One of these days I'll take an official vacation.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Like you've done so much. Like what do you just plan on growing your portfolio even more? Do you have any other like business ideas or aspirations? What's next for you?
So my goal is there's a couple of goals, right? I really want to build out my rental portfolio and my private money lending portfolio. I want to be able to spend as much time with my kids and my wife as I can and be really involved in their life, which I've been doing a really good job of the past few years. And then coaching. I really like coaching. I love helping my students reach up and or get to the path where I was at and then start seeing the dividends. And this happened 4 years ago for me. I was talking with one of my team members. I'd taken like 6 listings that day, Benson. It was crazy, right? It was a great day. And I got a call from two of my team members, and they said, "James, I just want to say thank you so much. You have absolutely changed my life. I've been on multiple teams. I've been my solo agent, and I've never done as good as I have been with you." And some of them are in tears. Like often they'd be in tears calling me, just full of gratitude, right?
Mm.
And that was so much more fulfilling for me than taking those 6 listings. I was like, "Oh, well,
Oh
this is
yeah.
probably what I need to go do because that's fun to help people." But
Oh yeah. It fills
so
you
I want to
up.
build that coaching program as well a little bit more. But just
That's
like
really
you,
cool.
when I do the coaching, it's like doing a podcast, right? I'm sharing ideas with them, they're sharing ideas with me, and get a lot of good ideas from everybody. And it's just a good little mastermind that I'm getting paid to train and help them out. So, yep.
Oh yeah. And it also too, I've found in like helping people, like you reinforce like the things that you're teaching them, it reinforces it in yourself. Like, oh yeah, like
Yes.
I got to keep doing these things, right? Like you don't want to let those like core, like foundational habits or the mental side of things like start to slack. Like when you teach people, it's like you're reminding yourself of what's important at the same time.
Yeah. I prospected today for a little over an hour and I set 4 appointments, which was awesome during the prospecting. And then one other person texted me back and I set a fifth appointment for the day. I'm like, what? I just did that in one day, right? Like if I can do that in one day, then I can teach my students how to do this. I can teach my team how to do it. But you got to follow it step by step. And it's not pretty. It's not
Yeah.
sexy. It's actually very draining. And just like you said earlier in our conversation, like um it can be draining and there's so many ideas out there that you don't know which ones to actually follow, right? And what to
Yeah.
do. But there's those foundational pieces that work for everybody, but they're the hard things, right?
Hmm.
Everybody sees success, but they don't see the work that was put into getting to that point. All the practices, all the weightlifting, all the diet, all the like rejection, right? They see, oh, James number one again, again, again. That's so crazy. Like it was just given to me, right? No,
Right.
plenty of hours that I had to put in. And honestly, some years I'd break into tears like once or twice because I was so frustrated or so mad or just so tired. But I just kept pushing through and it gave me the life that I have now. So
Yeah. The overnight 10-year success.
yeah, seriously. Yeah. Yep. So
Well, James, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I had a good time talking to you. I think that we're going to continue the conversation going, and I think we can find some ways to work together and do some cool things.
that'd be
But
great.
congratulations on all of your growth, and your rental portfolio is growing and you're giving back to the people that you work with. And I believe that's one of the keys is finding that way of contribution, right? One of the
Yes.
main things that us as human beings really are looking for, validation and finding a good path and something that makes us feel good. And that contribution is such a huge part of it, I believe. And you're doing it exceptionally well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's been awesome talking with you too, Benson. I love talking to people about real estate, making money, and growing a business. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. And for everybody that's listening, how can they get a hold of you? If somebody wants to work with you out in Arizona, or if maybe there's an agent who is looking for some guidance, like where can they find you?
Yeah, send me a message on Facebook or Instagram, James Michener. So it's Michener on Instagram and on Facebook. Send me a email to michenercoaching@gmail.com. So MICHENER coaching@gmail.com, or send me a quick text message, 928-308-4700. So I'm always open to having conversations. So
Awesome. And for everybody who listened to us today, thank you so much. Keep an eye out for more REI Hacker podcasts coming to you in the near future. Lots of tips and tricks and inspiration for your business. And hopefully we'll see you in the near future. Everybody take care.
thanks, Benson.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.